Yeah, everyone. Airplanes and flight trips might be like the easiest punching bag to go for. They're also annoying. It's the best thing to make fun of because it's understandable how much they all suck. Almost everyone in the world has to take a flight at some point in their life, whether once or multiple times during a holiday. Either way, there's a high chance that when you get on a plane, something can go wrong. I mean, the whole process in general can be very annoying where, depending on where you live, getting to the airport already is the hardest part. Whether you have to go by train or pesto a friend to drive you there, and then once you actually get there, you have to trek through the whole place like a mini continent, waiting in like 5 or 6 line for 2 hours. And that's only halfway through, because then you have to wait at the boarding gate for your actually plane to arrive, or depending on the first step, how you got there and when, you can spend more time just waiting there doing absolutely nothing, waiting for the plane to arrive. It's kind of like a little mini demo test for what's going to be like on the fly, where you're already used to like sitting on a chair for like an hour maybe, make that was by 5 times, make the air disgusting, have like a baby in the bag, they're crying, and that's what's going to be like on your flight. I was planning on making like a 45-minute long video talking about like my experiences on the plane, but today I found another really bizarre story of like the worst case scenario to be on a flight where it actually seems like a nightmare. The worst thing to happen, obviously, that would be like a plane crash. It's not that, everyone lived, they were fine, duh. It's most like how it's the worst case scenario for like an annoying situation where it feels dreadful. For context, it was a Qatar Airways flight where I've not really been with them. I'm sure people like, watching this video have had their own story about them and how they're not the best. So you can most likely reach to the people in the story because they got really f***ed up by this airline and just they're awful managing. Simply, the story started with a flight departing from Athens in Greece to Doha in Qatar. Like, very simply, not that far away. It's not like you're crossing the Atlantic. It's not really the distance that was the issue in the story, as you'll see in a second. It's mostly like before the departure, like before the plane took off, there was a tiny delay, most likely a flight control issue. But who cares? That happens all the time. To your point that people are like, oh yeah, we understand, not that big of an issue. But the actual issue was that the air conditioning on the plane was broken, like perfectly in sync with the delay, so the people inside were sweltering, waiting for the plane to take off. And again, I have to preface, at this point in the story and later on, they were taking off from Greece. Like already, it's quite hot in there, so even if they had air conditioning, probably wouldn't help that much. But it was sort of funny, on the side that it was so unlucky to exactly happen in that moment, like perfectly timed up. But then it becomes nightmarish when that delay goes on for 3 hours. I feel about me saying 3 hours is like a big understatement, like how bad it was. 5 minutes would already be like the threshold for like how annoying it would be. So imagine that 12 times, multiplied by 3, and you have 180 cycles of that over and over. I'm sorry, but I have to show a video of the cabin inside. So if you hate seeing sweat, I guess close your eyes and imagine the audio of a bunch of like Eskimos inside an igloo, or cold, I don't know. I'm not kidding, when I first saw the video, it felt like an actual Where's Waldo picture book where there's so much shit going on, like everyone has like their own story about this nightmare. You have like 5 of them people like waving that piece of paper in the face to cool themselves, but already like the air inside is so hot, it doesn't make a difference. You have a couple of men with an old guy taking off their shirts, fair enough, and then you have the guy right there prepping himself to throw up in the bag. He's my favorite. It is because you do have a few old people there in the flight that it's so hot in there they actually need help to not pass out. I was thinking, why are they all standing up? And then I realized, oh yeah, those kinds of airplane seats are like cheap leather, so if you sat down on them for like a minute, it'd feel awful. And it all happened in the worst place to be in Europe during summer, in Greece, where it can be like 38 degrees. Again, like I said, when I mentioned the numbers, 38 degrees, 3 hours, it feels like, very light, but when you're actually there in that situation, it's an actual hell. You feel like you're being tortured and you want to punch the window to get out. Another point I want to bring up that doesn't really explain the delay, but makes the story even more funny, is that most of the guys I see there, including that one guy doing an Instagram story, they're all Muay Thai fighters on the way to Doha for a competition. And it was a championship as well, like the worst possible time to have a delay, where they were most likely training the day before. And now they're stuck in this airplane that's so hot, it probably feels more like a sauna than anything else. But you know what? No matter if you're going to like a competition or just on holiday, you don't have to wait that long for 3 hours. I feel like within 20 minutes, it was so hot, everyone should have been allowed off the plane. Which they were eventually, but like I said, only after the 180 excruciating minutes, where they were just simply left at the boarding gate and the employees gave them like some water and one soft drink. Well, it was probably better to be there in the first place in that boarding part of a plane. And the passenger mentioned that there was only one person at the boarding gate. So if your plan was ruined by this long delay, you can sit down and shut up, or you can try to get some help from the one employee that can do shit. Thankfully and eventually, they were able to get on the flight, which that would be like the worst cherry on top on the cake, like, oh, sorry for making you wait 3 hours, your flight was cancelled as well. job. Thank you. But for the whole ordeal, as people were interviewed, like one guy brought a really good point that most of the Muay Thai fighters there that were going through the competition, they're all like, trained athletes. Imagine being an average person there with so hard, you were like that close to getting like a heat stroke. And that is true. I didn't see anything about that happening where like, I think everyone was fine, somewhat. But I really feel like 3 hours was the max that everyone would stay there for. Like anything longer, no one could stand up and walk to the boarding gate by themselves. They'd all need help.